Well, how does your family feel about your being in these movies?
They hate it. They're terrified. They think I'm just beyond belief, out the window with me, you know. And they've decided I shouldn't have any money. They hated the idea of my doing any modeling to make my own way. And as soon as I got into this, they're sending telegrams saying, "Oh, you've got to go model, please, just for a short time." Anyway.
Well,
They're so horrified that it amounts to the fact that they'll endorse the modeling idea 100 times before they dream of having to deal with this.
Remember when being an it girl actually meant something? When style, charisma, and a certain je ne sais quoi were enough to make the girl the ultimate trendsetter. When it felt like they discovered cool rather than inherited it. If you were a teenage girl in the 2000s, you probably obsessed over the likes of Alexa Chung, Chloe Sevigny, Kate Moss, or the Tumblr cool girls like Sky Ferreira. These women weren't just famous, they had it. They didn't follow trends, they created them. They had the perfect mix of rebellion, style, and effortless charm that made them magnetic. Fast forward to today, and something has changed. The new it girls aren't effortlessly cool, they're just rich. Lily Rose Depp, Hailey Bieber, Romy Mars, Kendall Jenner, these aren't downtown girls with an eye for fashion. They're nepo-babies with the right last name. Instead of mystique, we get well-connected socialites styled by PR teams and handed magazine covers on a silver platter. So what happened? How did we go from discovering new it girls to being force-fed celebrity offspring? And more importantly, can the real it girl ever make a comeback? Today we're diving into the rise and fall of the it girl and how nepotism changed the game forever. Chapter 1. What even is an it girl? The term it girl has been around for over a century, but its meaning has always been tied to one thing, an undefinable magnetism. It wasn't about wealth, connections, or traditional beauty. It was about charisma, effortless style, and a raw, untouchable coolness that couldn't be manufactured. An it girl wasn't someone who simply followed trends. She became the trend. She had a presence that was impossible to replicate, a way of dressing, speaking, and carrying herself that made others want to emulate her, even if they couldn't quite figure out why. The term was first popularized in 1927 with the silent film starring Clara Bow, Hollywood's original it girl. The film defined it as an explicable star quality, a mix of confidence, charm, and a kind of reckless allure that made someone utterly captivating. Clara Bow herself embodied the spirit in real life. She wasn't the most refined actress, nor did she come from wealth or privilege like many of her Hollywood peers. Instead, she was a Brooklyn-born, working-class girl who clashed with the expectations of high society, exuding a rebellious energy that made her all the more intriguing. Unlike other actresses of her era, who were trained to be polished and poised, Clara Bow was electric on screen, her emotions raw, her expressions wild, her presence magnetic. She didn't just play the it girl in a film, she defined the archetype for generations to come. But even in the golden age of Hollywood, nepotism played a major role in shaping the industry. Studios carefully curated starlets from elite families, grooming them to become the faces of old Hollywood. Grace Kelly, a literal princess, came from Philadelphia high society before she became a Hollywood icon. Elizabeth Taylor, born into a well-connected British-American family, had Hollywood doors opened to her from an early age. Audrey Hepburn, the epitome of elegance, was the daughter of a Dutch baroness. These women had some level of built-in privilege, but here's the key difference. They still had to earn their place. They weren't simply handed magazine covers or given starring roles because of their last names. They had to act, captivate audiences, and cultivate an aura that made them legends. Unlike today's nepo-baby it girls, who often float into fame without having to prove much of anything, these women had to demonstrate actual talent and presence to maintain their status. By the 1960s, the it girl archetype began shifting away from Hollywood and into the world of underground cool. Edie Sedgwick, the tragic Warhol muse, was one of the first it girls to embody both extreme privilege and chaotic rebellion. A wealthy heiress from an old money family, Edie could have lived a quiet, respectable life, but she ran straight into the counterculture scene instead. She became Andy Warhol's muse, with her signature pixie cut, oversized earrings, and fur coats making her an icon of the 60s avant-garde fashion. Edie didn't just act in major films, nor was she a trained model, yet she was famous simply because of her energy, her ability to captivate a room and exude effortless cool without even trying. And I love that movie Factory Girl, but it's really kind of horrible what Andy Warhol did to her. He definitely used her, in my opinion. I think Andy Warhol was very shallow, and you can kind of see that in his artwork, just kind of capitalizing on the concept of fame, because he's the guy, I think, who invented the catchphrase, in the future everyone's going to be famous for 15 minutes. Then came the 1970s and Jane Birkin, the epitome of nonchalant French effortlessness. Despite the fact that she was British, with her long bangs, wicker baskets, and carefree attitude, she became a cultural touchstone for what it meant to look effortlessly stylish. She didn't wear flashy designer pieces, yet her everyday wardrobe, simple white blouses, flared jeans, and unstructured handbags became aspirational. Birkin represented a type of it girl mystique that felt attainable, but always just out of reach, something modern fashion icons struggle to replicate. And by the 1990s, the it girl had transformed again, this time rejecting high society glamour in favor of grunge aesthetics and underground cool. Kate Moss, discovered at an airport at the age of 14, disrupted the world of high fashion supermodels with her wave-like frame and nonchalant attitude. While models of the 80s were tall, athletic, and glamorous, think of Naomi Campbell and Cindy Crawford, Kate Moss represented something different: grunge, rebellion, and a raw, undone aesthetic that felt completely effortless. She didn't look like she was trying, and that made her even more magnetic. Her relationship with Johnny Depp, her cigarette in hand, party photos, her slipped dresses, and disheveled hair. She embodied 90s heroin chic, a controversial but defining aesthetic of the era. Then came the 2000s to 2010s, the Tumblr era it girls, with Alexa Chung leading the charge. Alexa wasn't a Hollywood actress, nor was she a major musician or model. She was just a girl with impeccable style, a wicked sense of humor, and an energy that made her feel like the coolest person in the room. And I do remember that era, and like looking at her fashion and her styling, she had the perfect mix of indie sleaze and British irreverence, always pairing thrifted finds with high fashion in a way that made her look like she just threw something on, but in the most enviable way possible. Unlike today's influencers who often rely on stylists and branding teams, Alexa's style felt completely organic, making her the ultimate Tumblr era fashion inspiration. What ties all of these women together is effortlessness. Their it girl status wasn't something they carefully constructed, it was something the world recognized in them. They weren't marketing themselves, they simply existed, and people wanted to be them. But then something shifted. The rise of social media, influencer marketing, and nepo-baby culture changed the game. It girls stopped being discovered in dive bars, at underground fashion shows, or in grainy street-style photos. They started being placed in the spotlight from birth, carefully curated by PR teams and luxury brands before they had even done anything noteworthy. Today's it girls aren't random discoveries. They're the daughters of already famous people, handed campaigns, magazine covers, and movie roles before they've even proven why they deserve them. The it girl used to be someone you weren't supposed to notice at first, but once you did, you couldn't look away. Now the it girl label is slapped onto whoever already has the biggest last name and the most PR backing. The sense of mystique, individuality, and effortless cool has been replaced by strategic branding and privilege. Today's it girls don't have it, they just have connections. And that's why something about them feels different. The organic, unexpected nature of the it girl phenomenon has been replaced by something predictable, something pre-approved. But if history has taught us anything, it's that the coolness can't be manufactured forever. And maybe, just maybe, we're on the cusp of an it girl revolution, one that brings back the real it factor. Chapter 2. When did the it girl become a nepo baby? There was a time when being an it girl felt almost random. A cool, downtown girl discovered by a magazine photographer, a musician's girlfriend who accidentally became a style icon, or an indie actress with an intriguing aura who suddenly became a fashion muse. The it girl wasn't something you planned to be. She was someone who simply became iconic by sheer force of personality, style, and presence. But today, the new it girls all have something in common. Their last names are famous. Gone are the days of accidental it girls. Instead, we have Lily Rose Depp, who is suddenly walking Chanel runways before she had even proven herself as an actress. Hailey Bieber is mostly known for marrying Justin Bieber, despite her efforts to rebrand herself as a minimalist fashion icon. Sofia Richie, after years of struggling to find her niche in the it girl world, suddenly reinvented herself as the queen of quiet luxury, earning mass admiration. But she was already the daughter of Lionel Richie and connected to some of the biggest names in the entertainment industry. Even Hollywood's next generation is dominated by nepo baby it girls, from Zoe Kravitz, the daughter of Lenny Kravitz and Lisa Bonet, to Dakota Johnson, the daughter of Don Johnson and Melanie Griffith, to Maya Hawke, the daughter of Uma Thurman and Ethan Hawke. These women women are stylish, beautiful, and often talented, but their paths were paved before they even took their first steps into fame. This shift didn't happen overnight. While nepotism in fashion and Hollywood has always existed, there was a time when it girls still had to prove themselves in order to be truly embraced by the culture. Even if a woman had industry connections, she still had to create a persona that was captivating enough to make people care about her. That's why in the early 2000s we saw figures like Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie as the first wave of it girls who rose to fame purely off their family wealth and socialite status. They weren't necessarily actresses, musicians, or models, but they became famous through their larger-than-life personalities, reality TV shows, and the way they controlled their public image. Paris Hilton in particular wasn't just a rich girl, she built an entire persona around being the ultimate party heiress, complete with a signature voice, catchphrases, and an exaggerated, almost satirical version of wealth that made her both aspirational and ridiculous at the same time. But Paris Hilton still had to try. She had to create a public persona that was magnetic. You couldn't look away. She had to lean into the role of the socialite princess, making herself a blueprint for early 2000 excess. And today's it girls don't even need to manufacture their own mystique. They're simply handed the title and expected to embody it. Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie represented the transition phase between old school it girls and today's privileged class of fashion darlings. Then social media is what sealed the deal. The 2010s saw the rise of Instagram and influencer culture, making it easier than ever for nepo babies to step into the spotlight without doing much at all. Unlike their predecessors, who had to cultivate a unique presence or align themselves with underground fashion movements, the new wave of it girls are pre-packaged and sold to us by luxury brands before we even have a chance to discover them ourselves. Fashion houses like Chanel and Dior, as well as Prada, started favoring recognizable last names over fresh faces, knowing that a famous surname would generate immediate press and social media engagement. Why take a risk on an unknown cool girl when you could just sign Johnny Depp's daughter or Cindy Crawford's clone, Kaya Gerber? Despite being a good model, was given high-profile campaigns and runway slots before she ever had to struggle as an unknown face in the industry. A stark contrast to her mother, who had to work her way up from catalog modeling to superstardom. At the same time, TikTok and Instagram replaced underground fashion scenes as the primary way to discover it girls. In the past, it girls emerged from subcultures grunge, indie, sleaze, punk, and bohemian. There was always a distinct fashion movement attached to the rise of the new it girl. Whether it was the heroin chic look of Kate Moss in the 90s, the effortlessly undone elegance of Jane Birkin in the 70s, or the indie Tumblr aesthetic of Alexa Chung in the 2010s. These women weren't handed their status, they built it through sheer influence. But now fashion isn't dictated by subcultures, it's dictated by algorithms. Instead of organically rising to fame because of their street style, presence, or underground influence, it girls today are selected by brands and placed on our Instagram feeds in highly curated photo shoots. The entire process feels clinical and lacks the organic discovery that made past it girls so special. One of the biggest reasons the nepo baby it girl takeover happened is because subcultures no longer have the same influence on fashion as they once did. In the past, it girls didn't just come out of nowhere. They represented a specific moment in culture, a style movement that felt fresh and new. Kate Moss embodied grunge and heroin chic. Alexa Chung became the face of indie sleaze in the Tumblr era. Chloe Sevigny represented 90s downtown cool and the rise of indie cinema fashion. These women were part of something larger than themselves, a cultural movement, a distinct aesthetic, an underground style revolution. Now fashion moves too quickly for subcultures to solidify, and as a result, it girls no longer emerge from specific fashion movements. It's true because in the past a lot of these movements would emerge from, bigger cities like New York or Seattle grunge scene, but now they're just emerging different, and a lot of times they took longer to develop. And instead, trends are dictated by TikTok algorithms, which cycle through aesthetics at a breakneck speed. This makes it impossible for a single aesthetic to define an era, and in turn makes it harder for an it girl to naturally emerge as a face of a generation. Because of this, the industry has defaulted to nepo babies as their chosen fashion icons, instead of looking for the next Kate Moss in the underground club scene or discovering the next Alexa Chung through street style photography. They simply recycle the same names, giving us the daughters of famous actors, musicians, and models, instead of seeking out some fresh faces. This reliance on familiarity over originality has made it girl culture feel predictable and uninspired, the opposite of what it girls used to represent. It honestly reminds me of the whole remake culture of remaking TV shows and movies, redoing everything because they're just relying on old names and last names, so people are like, oh well, that's Johnny Depp's daughter, you know what I mean? So they're just relying on some sort of sense of nostalgia in a way and trying to revive these famous people by using their children. And there's nothing inherently wrong with nepo babies. Many of them are beautiful, stylish, and talented in their own ways. But there's a difference between an it girl who earns her influence and one who is simply placed in the role. The magic of the old school it girl was that she felt like a discovery, a girl you saw in a candid street style photo or a random indie film, someone who had that thing you couldn't quite put your finger on. Today, it girls don't feel like discovery, they feel like a product. Their influence isn't something they built, it's something they inherited. And that's why their presence in fashion and culture, while aesthetically pleasing, feels hollow. So the question remains, can the real it girl ever make a comeback, or is nepo baby culture here to stay? Chapter 3, why we romanticize the old school it girl. There's a reason why people feel nostalgic for the old school it girl. She felt authentic. She wasn't carefully curated by a PR team, nor was she strategically placed on magazine covers from birth. She was found, not manufactured. Her rise to cultural relevance felt democratic, as if anyone with enough style, charisma, and sheer magnetism could simply stumble into it girl status. She was someone we collectively decided to idolize, based on an energy that couldn't be replicated. With today's constant nepo baby discourse, there's a growing exhaustion with pre-packaged coolness. The appeal of women like Chung, Chloe Sevigny, and Kate Moss is that they weren't necessarily meant to be famous. They didn't have famous last names or powerful Hollywood parents who could pull strings behind the scenes. Instead, they emerged through a mix of style, individuality, and an undeniable presence that made them possible to ignore. That's why even decades later, these women still have a cult following. They represent an era of coolness that felt organic, when being an it girl wasn't about being placed in the spotlight, it was about having an aura so strong that the spotlight naturally found you. Unlike today's it girls who are groomed for cultural relevance from birth, the it girls of the past had to prove why they deserved attention. It wasn't about visibility, it was about energy. You couldn't fake it girl status. You couldn't force the public to be obsessed with you. You either had it or you didn't. Part of what made old school it girls so compelling was the thrill of discovery. They weren't force-fed through us through social media algorithms or luxury brand campaigns. We stumbled upon these indie films, underground fashion circles, grainy street photographs, and candid paparazzi shots. Chloe Sevigny wasn't a nepo baby. She was just a girl who hung out with the right people in New York's downtown scene, who had a quirky, effortless sense of style that made her an unexpected icon. She wasn't placed on magazine covers because of her connections. She was featured in Vogue because people were obsessed with her naturally cool girl aesthetic. The same can be said for Kate Moss, who wasn't supposed to be a supermodel. At 5'7", she was shorter and thinner than the statuesque models of the previous decade. But that's exactly what made her rise so electric. She didn't fit the mold. She was discovered completely by accident at an airport. Yet within a few years, she had become a defining face of grunge and heroin chic. She wasn't handed an it girl status, and became one because of the disruption. The randomness of these discoveries made them exciting. They made it girl culture feel like it was open to anyone, not just a pre-approved club of celebrity daughters. You didn't need the last name of Depp or Coppola. You just need to have it. The sense of randomness of anyone with the right energy being able to rise made it girl culture thrilling in a way that today's nepo baby era never could. Another key reason we romanticize old school it girls is because they weren't just trying to be it girls, they just were. Their style felt effortless, uncalculated, and they were simply throwing things together and somehow looking impossibly cool. Take Chung, for example. She didn't have a stylist carefully curating her aesthetic or a PR team pushing her as the next big thing. She just had an instinctive ability to mix vintage pieces with high fashion in a way that felt uniquely her own. She wasn't dressing for an audience, she was dressing for herself, and that's why she became an icon. Compare that to today's it girls, whose every outfit feels like it was meticulously planned for maximum engagement. Hailey Bieber's clean girl aesthetic isn't effortless, it's a careful, calculated brand. Sofia Richie's quiet luxury isn't accidental, it's a full-blown marketing strategy. These women might look stylish, but their fashion choices feel safe, designed to align with whatever trend is currently dominating social media. There's no sense of rebellion, no feeling that they're pushing boundaries or redefining coolness. The real it girls of the past didn't care about branding. They weren't dressing with the goal of becoming a fashion influencer or launching a beauty line. They were just being themselves, and the world happened to take notice. And that's what made them so irresistible. And one of the big differences between the old school it girls and today's nepo baby class is longevity. The reason why Alexa Chung, Kate Moss, and Jane Birkin still hold cultural relevance is because their coolness wasn't tied to a temporary moment in pop culture. It was embedded in their presence. They didn't just follow trends, they set them. And their influence has endured for decades. And it's true, they're always just, when you look back at these different decades, you're just always going to look look back at their influence, and if you compare the modern day it girls whose relevance is often fleeting, nepo babies may dominate fashion campaigns today, but will we still be talking about them in 10 to 20 years? If their fame is entirely built on their last name and their ability to hop onto an aesthetic trend, what happens when the fashion cycle shifts? When the clean girl aesthetic is no longer relevant, will Hailey Bieber still be an it girl? When quiet luxury is no longer aspirational, will Sofia Richie be still influencing style? And what makes an it girl truly iconic is her ability to transcend trends and remain relevant even when the cultural landscape changes. Jane Birkin's effortless French aesthetic is still influencing fashion decades later. Kate Moss is still a reference point for grunge minimalism. Chung is still considered one of the most stylish women of her generation. Their coolness wasn't just about what they wore, it was their essence. The reason we romanticize the old school it girl isn't just because we're nostalgic, it's because we miss what she represented. She was a symbol of organic, effortless cool. Someone who wasn't born into fame but captured it simply by existing in a way that felt magnetic. She didn't need to be styled to perfection, and she didn't need to have a famous last name to open doors. She just had something. With today's it girl culture feeling increasingly manufactured, there's a growing hunger for a return to authenticity, unpredictability, and the kind of effortless cool that can't be faked. We don't want to be told who the next it girl is. We want to find her the same way we found Chung in a random street style blog, the same way we saw Kate Moss in candid backstage photo, the same way we became obsessed with Jane Birkin's undone effortless elegance decades after she stepped into the spotlight. Chapter 4. Can the it girl make a comeback? For years it has felt like the it girl was something of a dying breed, replaced by a carefully curated class of nepo babies, influencer marketing fashion darlings, and social media made celebrities. But is she truly gone forever? Or are we on the verge of an it girl renaissance? While the dominance of nepo babies suggests that the effortless cool have been replaced by a pre-packaged coolness, there are still growing signs that the tides might be shifting. And the truth is, manufactured it girls don't last. They may be fashionable for a moment, but their influence fades when the next marketing trend takes over. There's an increased sense of boredom with fashion's obsession with the same last names, and a cultural hunger for someone new, someone unexpected, someone who actually has it. One of the biggest signs that a new it girl era may be emerging is the return of indie sleaze, a chaotic, rebellious aesthetic that thrived in the mid-2000s and early 2010s, when it girls still felt underground and unpredictable. This was the era of Kate Moss stumbling out of clubs in ripped tights and fur coats, Chung pairing vintage Chanel with thrift store finds, or Sky Ferreira looking like she rolled out of bed and into a high fashion campaign. It was messy, low maintenance, and not overly curated, something today's fashion world obsessed with perfection and polished influencer branding has been lacking. And now, as fashion cycles back to the early 2000s, we're seeing a renewed interest in the kind of it girls who once defined the era. The return of grunge, DIY fashion, the rebellious energy that suggests people are craving less polished, less predictable kind of cool. The it girl has always been a response to the cultural climate. She exists as an antidote to what's currently oversaturating pop culture. The past decade has been dominated by carefully curated minimalism and PR-controlled influencer aesthetics. The next it girl could be a reaction against that. She might be a little messy, a little chaotic, and a little more unexpected. Another factor that could bring back the it girl is the rise of micro-celebrities. Girls who become fashion icons not because of their family connections, but because of their sheer originality. Unlike traditional influencers who still carefully cultivate their brand, these micro it girls don't seem to be trying, which ironically makes them even more magnetic. Take Devon Lee Carlson, for example. She didn't inherit her it girl status from a famous parent. She built it through her thrifted looks, her playful approach to Y2K nostalgia, and a natural sense of style that feels fun rather than forced. Then there's also Julia Fox, who has branded herself as a kind of anti-it girl, someone who embraces chaos, unpredictability, and a refusal to fit into traditional beauty and fashion standards. While Julia Fox may not be the it girl in the traditional sense, she represents something we've been missing, someone who doesn't play by the celebrity industrial complex that turns nepo babies into it girls overnight. The beauty of the micro it girl era is that it brings back the thrill of discovery, and it allows people to stumble upon a new fashion muse organically, rather than being told who to idolize through Vogue covers and brand deals. The modern internet landscape, for all its flaws, still allows for underground coolness to break through, and that's the key ingredient in reviving the real it girl. Perhaps the biggest factor working against today's nepo baby it girls is that Gen Z is obsessed with authenticity. Unlike past generations, Gen Z has an intense awareness of privilege, wealth, and power, and they're not afraid to call out the blatant advantages that allow nepo babies to dominate the fashion and entertainment industries. Every time Lily Rose Depp or Hailey Bieber lands a major fashion campaign, social media erupts with conversations about who actually deserves these opportunities. Nepo babies aren't just being noticed, they're being criticized for the way in which their privilege grants them an it girl title they haven't truly earned. And while Nepo babies still can thrive in an industry built on connections, the public's growing disinterest in manufactured it girls suggests that we might be headed towards a shift. If the it girl is supposed to represent the moment, the cultural climate, the definition of what's cool, then it makes sense that we might be heading towards a rejection of the perfect PR manufactured fashion figures in favor of someone who feels real. If history tells us anything, it's that the it girl is always a reaction against whatever feels tired, overplayed, or inauthentic. And the next it girl won't be a product of Hollywood's nepotism. She'll be a new kind of cool, someone we didn't see coming. If we are in fact on the verge of an it girl revival, what will she look like? Will she be an underground musician who unexpectedly becomes a fashion muse, a thrift store obsessed girl who dresses entirely on instinct and defines the next major aesthetic movement? Will she come from a subculture that hasn't been algorithmically processed yet, something we haven't seen before? So will the it girl make a comeback? The answer is yes, but not in a way we've been conditioned to expect. The era of the it girl being handed campaigns and magazine covers through privilege alone may be fading, but that doesn't mean we won't see the rise of a new kind of it girl, one who represents a backlash against hyper-curation, influencer branding, and nepo baby culture. And what is clear, that coolness can't be manufactured forever. The it girl was never supposed to become someone we were told to idolize. She was supposed to be someone we discovered. And history shows us that no matter how much the fashion industry tries to control coolness, true it girls always find a way to break through. So the next generation of it girl won't be the daughter of a rock star or actor. She won't be someone who has a PR team strategically building her brand. She'll be someone we don't see coming. And maybe that's what makes her iconic. Or are we on the verge of an it girl renaissance? Or is the era of the effortless cool gone forever? And what do you think? And who the next it girl will be? Let me know in the comments below. And it is interesting, I am kind of getting sick of I always see these people and at first I don't even know the daughter or son of someone famous, and then after I find out, I'm like, God, is there anyone who's not a daughter or son of someone famous who's breaking through in Hollywood right now? It just seems like a really big trend. It would be nice to just have some actors or actresses just being discovered for their talent and breaking through. I don't mind if you're a nepo baby, if you're truly talented and really good at acting. Obviously, it's easier for you to get ahead because you have the money and the privilege and wealth backing you. But if you can prove yourself to be talented, then to each their own. Anyways, let me know in the comments below. What are your thoughts on the whole nepo baby thing? All right, thanks for watching.